good morning, New Mexico. We are 99.9 FM, M810. It's time now once again for the Rusty Nut Show with your host, Mr. Gabriel Garcia of the Auto Angel, and of course, yours truly, here from 99.9 FM, M810. We want to thank Advanced Auto Parts, proud sponsors of this great show, and of course, the Auto Angel, Gabriel and his familia, bringing us, educating us about our vehicles, our second biggest investment. Buenos días, Dios. Gabriel, how are you?
Bien malcriado y mal pagado, pero contento, hombre. How are you?
I am doing great. No complaints, brother. Appreciate you filling in last week. I was hunting.
All right. How'd it go?
It went good. I got a 5x5.
Nice. Congratulations, bro. Good job.
First elk I've gotten as far as a bull elk. You know what I mean?
You do run over it on the way with your truck?
Over it, and then I put it in reverse and otra vez.
Too funny, brother. Too funny. Hey, look at this right now. Who's that?
Who is that? I can't see.
That's the Food Depot stopping for this.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we haven't talked about that in a long time.
So real quick, I mean, that's not what this show is really about, but, you know, I like to just promote food drives year round. I mean, it's not just during the holidays that people can use the boost that they need. And we learned that during COVID, how many families can benefit from all the work that the Food Depot does. So there he is, loud and proud, picking it up.
Cool, ¿cómo está?
We'll give you a shout out on Que Suave Radio, bro. What's your name?
Paul Rodriguez.
Paul Rodriguez. There you go.
All right, Paul.
So on Taco Tuesday, listen in. All right. So anyway, those of you who just tuned in, the whole purpose of this show is to teach you, to empower you with information, how to keep your second largest investment, that being your vehicle, second only to your home. How to keep it in front of the tow truck. So we try to give you tips and information on, you know, the different levels of expense that you're going to run into, because the average vehicle on the road today is 12 years old. And with that comes over 120, 140,000 miles. They get 300, and not without their obstacles, though. You run into expenses along the way that you have to incur, and that's the whole purpose of the show. How do you avoid some of the bigger ones? How do you keep them manageable? And how do you pick and choose which ones you need for what you're doing? How's that sound?
That sounds like a winner. Of course, you know, Gabe, I really enjoy and have learned a bunch, but it's really just to teach us and make us really think about, if there's an issue with your car, what's the best way to take care of it? And there are some people that are very mechanically inclined that might be able to do it themselves, but it also makes those ruin-it-yourselfers think a little bit as well, because your vehicle is it's your second biggest investment, so we can really mess it up if we don't know what we're doing. But more importantly, it's like you say, taking care of your vehicle, and also safety for your family who's going to be driving in it.
There you go. And today's show, there'll be some of that safety involved, you know, on the subject. So real quick, this is an attitude of gratitude. Thank you to the Gonzalez family and Que Suave Radio for giving shows like this a voice where we're able to give back to the community. Thank you to my team here at the Auto Angel for giving me the freedom to be here on the radio with you every Tuesday, Patricio. I really appreciate that. You know, I want to say hi to my mom real quick, Caroline. There goes Vanessa.
Hola, our girl Vanessa.
And that's Ernest. So we got to say a shout out real quick to our newest member of the team, Ernest. He joined the team, I don't know, last week or so. So he's a new face for the Auto Angel. We really appreciate him joining in and helping us. Norma's on vacation, so hello to Norma out there. We know she's listening. And then we'll go ahead and say happy Taco Tuesday. Oh, here we go, Patricio. Why did the ghost go to the bar?
Why did the ghost go to the bar? He went to the bar to find his...
For the booze.
No, for the booze. Got it. I was trying to think of a broom. I was thinking to find his broom.
All right, bro. One more. What's the best thing that you put into pumpkin pie?
Sugar.
Your teeth, hombre. Come on.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Okay, good. So we want to, do again, this show's about an attitude of gratitude. We want to say our red, white, and blue thank you this week to all enlisted servicemen and women, active duty, stateside, abroad, reservists, veterans, and most of all to the families that support these brave men and women. Patricio, what do we always say about the dining room table?
that there's always one empty chair there because it could be your grandparents, your father, your mother, your niece, nephew, brother, sister that is out there protecting us, and that's the empty chair that is there.
And it's real for the family,
Yeah.
¿verdad?
Very true, very true.
It's real for them. For them, that absence is huge. I mean, they're worried. They watch the news, they listen. They're waiting for the phone to ring, that kind of thing. Even if they're not in a danger zone, even if they're in basic training or whatever, there's still that the fear that they have because that's their loved one. So thank you to those families. And then there's some dear to you. We want to thank next the first responders. Take it from there, Patricio.
First responders, firefighters, the wildland firefighting crew. Of course, they're all over the place. We know some have been in California, Oregon, and our police officers, you know what? They put on that uniform. They're willing to sacrifice their lives for people they don't even know. So big shout out to our police officers, firefighters, military men and women, and their families as well.
There you go. And that's a big, big attitude of gratitude here. Then we like to take a minute during the show to thank someone in a thankless job, somebody who, gives it their best, shows up whether it rains or snows or shines or whatever it takes to get it done. Maybe they even put themselves in harm's way, and some of them not even for pay. So this one today was, I asked Caroline, what's a thankless job? And right away, it didn't even take her 2 seconds. She said, school crossing guards. That's definitely something that I see daily. And, they have to wear gloves already and hats and everything because at, 7:30 in the morning, it's cool already outside. And they're going to be working through that time where it gets really cold or too hot and even dangerous. So thank you so much to all those volunteers that do that.
Exactly. And even, I'm glad you brought that up. School's been around and been in session or whatever, but still, you guys got to be aware and remind yourself, 15 miles per hour in front of all school zones. 15. Got it?
Oh, boy. Good thing you clarified it because it sounded like you're giving us a license to break the law.
That's right. 15 millas a la hora.
15. He's got it down. That's your Spanglish lesson brought to you by Patricio himself today.
Claro que sí.
And then we'll get into the Kyovos of the day. We want to say Kyovo to Ranger over at Old Trail Garage. The Portillo boys, James Portillo from Portillo's Alignments and Brakes. He's hunting this week, so good luck on that hunt. And we got George Maestas of Allied Electric. He scored an Oryx this last weekend with his 3 boys out there on the missile range. So a lot of wildlife management going on. Patricio, you're not the only one filling up the freezer.
Yes, sir. Gracias a Dios. It's taken me years to get one out. Que bárbaro. But hey, you got to be persistent.
Yeah, that's why they call it hunting.
That's right. And I just want to send a shout out, of course, to, I know your buddy James over at Action Glass, who you forgot last time we were talking about. That's okay, bro. That's why you're the rusty nut, bro.
I need you to remind me of all these plans. Go ahead.
James and I think of Ron Chavez all the time, and Angela, his family, and also to Vince and Stephanie Lopez. Good morning. How you guys doing?
Awesome. Good morning, and thanks for tuning in. So now we'll get into the subject. Now, these subject matters come up again and again. And again, they're inspired by me when I'm inspired by what's in the shop today or recently. And I've had a couple come through recently with this problem. And I'm going to touch on drive shafts and U-joints again.
Okay.
Now, there's so much about them that it's important to revisit that subject because they've changed over the years and how they're serviced, etc. So a U-joint, for a lot of people who have no idea what it is, a U-joint, it's also a universal joint. So the shortened version is U-joint. It's a component that connects the drive shaft. So let's talk about the drive shaft real quick. What cars have them and what cars don't? So the 12-year-old vehicle and newer that have drive shafts are mostly your all-wheel drives or your rear-wheel drives, meaning pickup trucks, SUVs. The vehicles that are front-wheel drive only, I got a customer coming in. Let's mask up real quick.
Got it. Okay.
So you got a vehicle that has all-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive. It's got U-joints on it that need to be replaced. So real quick, let's talk in there that.
So I got a quick question. So you telling me that not every single car has a drive shaft?
Correct. So on the front-wheel drive cars, they'll use something called a CV axle. So it's a little different.
Do they have the axle? So there's not a drive shaft running from is it the transmission to the rear of the tires?
There you go, because it's front wheel drive, so they use an axle going left to right, and they're shorter, and they're called CV axles.
Wow, I didn't know that. And I've been doing this show with you for over a year and a half, almost two. Que bárbaro. You're not doing your job of educating us.
Here we are, we're getting in depth.
Okay.
A U-joint is shaped like a cross, and it has a bearing cap on each end of it with needle bearings in it. And it allows for the strength as you rotate against the cross, so the transmission can rotate in a clockwise direction, and that shaft can make the differential turn. It can move a 5, 7, 10,000 pound vehicle with that strength. But it also allows, because of the cross, allows for the wheels to go over bumps and go into potholes and things. So it has to have that movement with the bearings and the cross. You follow?
I'm following. I'm
All right.
amazed.
And in the earlier vehicles where this was a very common product, where most cars were rear-wheel drive, most people had pickup trucks, etc., these U-joints were serviceable, meaning they had grease points where you could actually add grease to them. That has changed, where that's not as common anymore. We don't have serviceable U-joints. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm learning something new every day.
So
I was wondering if Bubba can put up a photo of maybe a U-joint or a photo of a drive shaft, and this way you can get really into detail.
I was gonna go get one from the back, but he told me not to move, so I'm not gonna move.
He already yelled at you, and you weren't even on the air.
Anyway, so the reality is, as you know, let's talk about, there's basically no maintenance to most of them. Some of them, yes, but majority of you people listening in SUVs, modern day trucks have U-joints, but they're not something that can be lubed. They're not something that can be maintained. They're basically have lifetime grease in them, and until that lifetime is ended, they're working fine. Does that follow?
So how will you know when the U-joints need to be replaced?
And we'll talk about that. So they fail for a variety of reasons. I mean, one of the reasons they fail is because a lack of lubrication, corrosion, and then just normal wear and tear that you have no control over. There's a UPS man. Do you want to be on the radio?
Hey, how's it going?
Orale, what's up, brother?
Doing his job, eh? We
Yeah.
listen loud and proud. Garcia's the last name. Gracias, hermano. Have a good one. All right, there we go.
Oh, Bubba had a photo. I don't know if it's too much, but anyway, and you're listening to the Rusty Nut Show right here with Mr. Gabriel Garcia of the Auto Angel. We're on Thank Advanced Auto Parts. We're talking about U-joints. We're talking about
There you
also
go. Boom.
drive shaft boom, and also you can catch us not only on the radio on 99.9 FM, M810, but you can catch us also on social media, Facebook, whatever, you name it. But there's a photo, Gabe.
There it is. So that front part facing us is the actual U-joint.
The cross.
The ones in the back are double cardan joints. So we won't get too crazy about the description, but that's a perfect picture of that cross. And those little round caps have little needle bearings inside them. And that's what we rely on, allowing that cross to let the drive shaft move with the tires up and down and still have that strength to send power from the transmission to the wheels. Again, so let's not get too crazy with the descriptions. We're more interested in what do you people listening need to know about U-joints. One is they wear out, and there's not a lot you can do about it. But how do you know they're wearing out? One of the things that I want to say is they can get extremely dangerous with little or no warning. And because there's no maintenance on them, a lot of times you won't know about it. So you do rely on where you're taking your vehicle to be serviced, that they get visually inspected, where a technician can see. What a technician might see is they might see shiny spots where there used to be rust, because as a U-joint will get rust, when it starts to rotate the way it shouldn't, you'll be able to tell that it's spinning in its housing, and that's a key indicator that it's wearing out and needs to be replaced. The more common ones is you're going to get noises. So from the driver's seat, you might hear some clunking, especially when you go to engage. So you go from park to drive, you might get a clunking sound. You go from drive to reverse, you might get a different clunk. So that would validate or warrant you telling your shop of your choice, hey, I hear this noise, could you please look into it? You follow?
I got it. I'm listening.
Another one is you get a loud, almost like a metal to metal kind of screeching. That screeching usually starts from a takeoff. It's almost like a whistle type screech, where as that dry U-joint is grinding those metal bearings inside, it'll screech as it rotates. A lot of times it'll go away the faster you go, but it's very pronounced when it's going slow. Sometimes it'll change in reverse is another indicator, but really all you want to know is if you're the owner of this car and that noise is new or abnormal to you, it's time to get it checked out, especially because you heard it here.
Profound question. Say that I take my vehicle into you and you guys check the U-joints and what else? The U-joints and the
Drive shaft.
drive shaft. Can
Okay.
you guys tell, and say it's not making any noise, can you guys tell just by looking at the drive shaft or the U-joints that something's out of whack?
Sometimes we could see play in them, meaning they're moving as the bearing has worn. It'll allow that cross to move up and down when it shouldn't be able to move at all. They're press fit.
Okay.
That's one of the things that we're looking for is how much they might move. The other thing is the longer the vehicle is, and not even, I mean, even just on these SUVs that aren't, maybe they have a third row seating or something. They're not the real short ones, but they'll have a bearing to support that drive shaft in the middle. So the drive shaft's going from about where you sit as the driver to like your right hip, from about there underneath the car all the way to the back wheels. And a lot of these vehicles have to have a support bearing that basically hangs down and holds that shaft. So a drive shaft looks like a piece of pipe. And we need to hold it in the middle so it doesn't vibrate, it doesn't break. So those carrier bearings can wear out and potentially cause noise and problems. You follow?
I'm following. Okay.
Another one that a visual inspection is part of that propeller shaft or U-joint. So again, the most noticeable symptoms to you people listening is going to be noises. And then the next one is vibration. Vibration's usually from accelerating. When you're leaving from that stop or you're on the highway and you put your foot on the accelerator and then back off and you feel a vibration when you're accelerating, that's usually a tip that you need to get those U-joints checked. And at that point, that means they're pretty loose. We need to get them checked sooner than later.
And I just want to go back to a statement you made. So there's no, once the U-joints, when you buy a car, there's no servicing the U-joints. You can't go and grease them or anything else like that. You're saying they are the way they are. You
Majority rule, yes.
That's strange because that's never, it seems like you could always like grease them or do something to them.
I will say that people like you and me that are rusty enough, maybe Benny listening, Mr. Zamora, might be kind of disappointed that they came non-serviceable. However, back in the day when we used to lube them, they wore out anyway. Even when you greased them, you still replaced a lot of U-joints back then. And now with today's modern alloys that they're made out of and the types of grease that they're built with, they last a long time. So it's kind of, and sometimes when we replace them, the aftermarket version of that U-joint does have greasable fittings that we install. So you might take out a non-serviceable one and install one that's greasable, and you could argue that you put in a better one. But quite honestly, most of you people out there listening haven't had to buy a U-joint recently and your car has 140,000 miles. They did pretty good.
So are you saying the technology for the U-joints have gotten better? Is that you picked today's current U-joints over the ones that the Rusty Nut used to put in his 442?
There you go. And I do say that I think it has more to do with the design of that U-joint hasn't changed very much, but what has changed is the quality of lubricants that we have and how well they're sealed from moisture and dust. Of course, the driveline angles help a lot too, not having really high lifted vehicles, things of that nature. So when a drive shaft, one of the things I was talking about from the driver's seat is vibration. It can get so bad that it can damage other things. So if you have a vibration that you feel, you could avoid that root canal, deal with the cavity. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir.
I don't like to get too crazy. I always want to make sure that everybody's on board here. The next thing I want to touch on, what do we got? We got like 5 more minutes left.
We got about probably six to seven.
Okay. So The carrier bearing, as I mentioned, can go bad also as part of that drive shaft. So we have the drive shaft itself, U-joints, carrier bearings, all that's part of it. On some of your vehicles, some of you listeners can end up getting an estimate for replacing just the U-joint. One of the arguments could be that the U-joint should be replaced in sets, meaning a drive shaft has at least two, one on each end. So there's some room to say, well, if we're going to do one because it's loose or noisy, might as well do the other one right away. So there's some, I think, a good practice there for a lot of people. Might as well do them both because they're equally as old. But what we're finding out more and more, and I've got one of each here today. I've got one where the U-joints and the carrier bearing are non-serviceable. That means the entire drive shaft has to be replaced. And then I've got one here that we're going to put U-joints in it. So it's getting more popular that the drive shafts or propeller shafts, another word for a drive shaft. So don't let that throw you off either. It could be, if you Googled it or something, you might see the word propeller shaft and your mechanic or your auto shop might be calling it a drive shaft. They do the same thing. They drive you forward or they propel you forward or backward.
And you mentioned something that I think maybe, and I don't know if it'd be a good half-hour show, but you mentioned lubricants, the type of lubricant that they're using nowadays, and the U-joints, I guess, are much, much better. A lot of people, and I'm one of them, may not think that it's important to put the correct type of, I guess, whether it be lubricant or oil or whatever in your vehicle. Maybe that could be a show one of these days.
We could spend, days on lubricants, sure. But I'd be glad to do it. Again, I try not to get too technical with this show. I like to keep it pretty simple. Well, let's go to the ruin it yourselfers real quick. If you guys are replacing U-joints and you're trying to do someone a solid and save them some money on replacing that, just be careful because a lot of these drive shafts are made out of aluminum. And pressing them out, you can change the shape of that drive shaft and actually create a problem. A lot of them have a fiberglass locking mechanism that can keep them from coming apart, and they need to be pressed really correct, or in some cases that can be forced out in a different way. I won't get into more than that. So for you guys who are ruin it yourselfers, just be careful. And there's a certain way that you install them also, where you want them, if you're installing a U-joint that has to be greased, you got to make sure that when it's installed in the car, it should be accessible to a grease gun, because you can put them backward and you won't be able to grease it. And you want them to be in line. You want grease fittings to be in line, so when your vehicle's on the ground, or it can, once it's lined up, the person servicing it can service them all right away. Go ahead.
Is that the same for a front wheel vehicle where you don't have the long drive shaft going from the front to the back? Is that the same type of service you do for one of those?
No, a front's going to be a constant velocity joint or CV axle. Pretty much no maintenance, disposable. That's just the way it is these days anymore.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the guys like Ranger, there was a time they used to service them, but anymore we're replacing them. That we'll do a quick summary before we run out of time here. Todd, as our manager here, he has a Ram truck, and so do I actually. They don't have locking hubs. So those of you out there who are driving around with Jeeps, trucks, even some of your General Motors products, if they have a solid front axle, it's a 4-wheel drive truck, and there's not manual locking hubs, no way to unlock the front diff, that means that front drive shaft is spinning whenever the tires are spinning. Do you follow?
Yeah.
Okay. That means the need for lubricating that becomes that much more critical. And Todd had experienced a case where he had just purchased a vehicle that was new to him, but it was pre-owned. And whoever owned it never greased it, I guess. Or anyway, long story short, that drive shaft came apart on the freeway. And it went through the floor. It tore the fuel lines. It almost hurt his wife's leg really bad. So don't take those kinds of things lightly. Those of you owning those Ram trucks, there is a way to grease them. It takes a needle that goes on the end of your grease gun. And I mean, in some cases, we'll take the drive shaft off to make sure it's greased. Once it's greased, you're good to go. But the reality is those ones are critical about greasing. Go ahead, Pat.
Does it happen on you talked about greasing vehicles that don't have the locking hubs. There's a lot of SUVs that are four-wheel drive that don't have locking hubs. Do you got to do the same to those SUVs?
On a lot of them you do, and on the older vehicles, you guys that are still using those old, it doesn't matter, we'll say 70s, 80s, even 90s trucks, that front drive shaft has what's called a double cardan U-joint nearest your, like right under where your feet are, where your gas pedal foot is. Right under there, there's a double back-to-back U-joint with a ball stud in it. And if that isn't greased, it gets expensive and dangerous fast. So that can be an issue right away. So I hope that helps a little bit, guys. I mean, in summary, you might say, well, the mechanic shop told me I need a whole drive shaft, and the ruin-it-yourselfer might say, no way, I put tons of U-joints. He'll come to find out that they're not serviceable. And in most cases, you're in your best interest to not even try. If they say it's not serviceable, put on the drive shaft. Don't mess around with the U-joints.
So real quick, so you're saying that you can replace the U-joints, the drive shaft might be okay?
On some vehicles, yes, but on a lot of the more modern, especially your SUVs, those drive shafts are disposable. You do not replace the U-joints. And if you find something on YouTube or wherever you might find that there's kits or something, just be careful, because you know there's lives at stake. At, you know, even at 50 miles an hour, 25 miles an hour, you know, they can catapult a vehicle. So don't take chances. Put in a quality drive shaft, and don't mess around trying to save anyone money, because you could cost somebody, you know, the biggest, most valuable thing there is, and that's a life.
Amen. Very good, very good. I liked it. And you've been listening to the Rusty Nut Show with Mr. Gabriel Garcia, the Rusty Nut himself of the Auto Angel. Hi, Mom. And then,
what's it like to be kissed by a vampire?
No sé, what?
It's a pain in the neck, hombre. Come on.
I don't know them dumb jokes. Anyway, also we want to thank Advanced Auto Parts. You can listen to the Rusty Nut Show every Tuesday at 10:30 on 99.9 FM, M810. We want to thank Bubba for producing this show. And, of course, you can catch it on YouTube, Facebook. God bless you guys. You have a good day.